My boss looked at me with surprise and asked, "Why did you take an Uber today? What happened to the company car you were given with your promotion?" Before I could say a word, my husband, who works in HR, smiled and said, "My sister is driving that car now." My boss went silent for a moment, and what she did next made me truly proud. Folks, I would love to get to know those of you who are tuning in right now a little better. If it is not too much trouble, please let me know where you are listening from. I am curious to learn about our audience. Enjoy the story. 6 years ago, I married Thaddeus Washington. Back then, I thought I had met the perfect man, smart, caring, and from a good family. His parents, Eldridge and Bernadine, owned a chain of pharmacies across Fulton County, Georgia. When we decided to buy a condo in a new development in Buckhead, they loaned us $50,000 for the down payment. "Nothing is too good for family," Bernadine said back then, hugging me tight. I was so grateful I was ready to kiss her feet. Thaddeus worked as the HR director at Apex Tech, the same company where I worked as a solutions architect. At first, everything was wonderful. He would meet me after work with a bouquet of daisies, make breakfast on weekends, and tell funny stories from the HR department. But gradually, something began to change, so subtly that I only caught on several years later. The first red flag popped up a year after the wedding. I came home after a hard day, and there were bank documents on the table. It turned out a credit card with a limit of $15,000 had been opened in my name. "Thaddeus, what are these papers?" I asked, waving the envelope. He didn't even look away from the TV, where some series was playing. "Oh, I opened that. It has great cash back and accumulates miles. You don't understand these financial intricacies anyway." "Well, you could have at least warned me." He turned to me with an expression that made me feel lost. He looked at me like I was crazy. "Warn you? Amara, I am helping you, and you're unhappy? You always forget about these things, or do you not trust me now?" And right then, for the first time, something felt unpleasant in my gut. Of course I trusted him. How could you not trust your own husband? So I just nodded and stayed silent. Then came other little things that weren't actually little. I remember his mother calling at 10 o'clock at night, saying she urgently needed help with documents for the pharmacies. I politely explained that I was already getting ready for bed because I had to get up early the next day. Thaddeus looked at me with a gaze that made me uncomfortable. In his eyes, I read a silent rebuke. My parents gave us money for the condo, helped us out in a tough spot, and you can't sit for an hour with some invoices? Some gratitude. That hour stretched into more than 3. I checked documents until 1 in the morning, getting confused with the numbers from exhaustion, and in the morning, I barely crawled into work, feeling like a squeezed lemon. At family gatherings, Thaddeus developed a habit of constantly interrupting me. As soon as I started talking about a new project or an interesting task, he would wedge himself into the conversation. What Amara wanted to say was, and then he would lay out his own interpretation of my words. At first, I tried to get a word in, to correct his version, but he would look at me with such hurt in his eyes that gradually I just started nodding and staying silent. But the scariest thing was happening to my career, although I didn't realize it back then. 3 years ago, I applied for the position of Chief Solutions Architect. I prepared thoroughly, passed all stages of selection, reached the finals, and didn't get the promotion. Later, through acquaintances, I found out the spot went to a guy with less experience and weaker metrics. "Don't be upset, babe," Thaddeus consoled me, stroking my shoulder. "It means you just aren't ready for that kind of responsibility yet. You'll grow professionally, gain some experience." 2 years later, history repeated itself exactly with the Director of Development position. And again, my husband patted me on the head like a little child. "Everything in its own time, sunshine. Don't rush things." I started doubting my own strength and abilities. Maybe I really wasn't ready. Maybe I truly lacked some important qualities. At work, I started keeping a low profile, stopped arguing in meetings, and began every sentence with apologies and disclaimers. 3 weeks ago, something happened that turned my whole life upside down. It was an ordinary Tuesday morning. I got up at 6:15, as always, and made myself some instant coffee. Thaddeus's espresso machine stood in the kitchen like a monument to his superiority. After I used the frother incorrectly once and spilled milk, he strictly forbade me from touching it. I looked out the window at the parking lot and froze. The spot where my silver Cadillac XT6 usually sat was gaping empty. "Thaddeus, where's my car?" I asked, flying into the kitchen. He was sitting at the table, buried in his phone, scrolling through his newsfeed. "Oh yeah, forgot to tell you, Soraya took it for a couple of days. Her Range Rover is stuck at the shop on Peachtree Street, and she has an important interview coming up on Tuesday." Soraya, Thaddeus's younger sister, was a 30-year-old woman who changed jobs with enviable regularity, never staying anywhere longer than 6 months. Thaddeus, but that is a company car. I am responsible for it, to the company with my head, you understand? He looked up from the screen for just a second, but that was enough for everything inside me to go cold from his gaze. "Do you not trust my sister? After everything my family has done for us? Are you really that ungrateful?" And there it was, the ace of spades, the down payment for the condo. $50,000 of guilt that, in my husband's opinion, I had to work off for the rest of my days. "No, of course I trust her." I heard my own voice from somewhere far away. "It's just, well, it is a company vehicle." "That's great then. Just 2 days, Amara. Don't be so petty and materialistic." 2 days unnoticed turned into 3, then stretched into a week. Every morning I called an Uber through the app. $45 one way, the same amount back in the evening. In 3 weeks, it racked up to over $1,500. A third of my paycheck after all deductions flew away on transport costs. I tried to talk to Thaddeus to get the situation back on a normal track. The first time, a week in, I approached him. "Thad, it is time to return the car. It is really inconvenient for me to take an Uber every day. I've started being late for work." "Soraya still hasn't resolved the issues with her ride. You don't want her to lose a job opportunity because of you, do you? What will people say?" The second time I tried was 2 weeks later, when my patience was running out. "Thaddeus, this is too much. I am spending crazy money on ride shares. My budget is bursting at the seams." "See, I knew it." He actually turned red with indignation. "Money turned out to be more important to you than family. Mama was right when she said you were a materialistic woman." After that conversation, I just gave up and went silent. Every morning I stood in the cold waiting for a car, freezing and angry. I arrived at work disheveled, with my hair messed up from the wind, smelling like strangers' air fresheners from the back seats of taxis. Colleagues started casting sideways glances and whispering. My assistant Ebony cautiously asked one day, "Ms. Amara, is everything all right? You have been looking sort of, well, very tired lately." "Everything is fine, Ebony, don't worry. Just some small car trouble. I will solve it soon." She nodded, but by her eyes, I understood she didn't believe a single word. And then, 3 weeks into this nightmare, the event I started my story with happened. Tuesday, leadership morning meeting at 9 o'clock. I flew into the conference room 8 minutes before the start. For the last few weeks, this was a record for punctuality. Everyone was already gathered in the glass-walled room. Traven from development with his eternally anxious look, Ebony with her notepad and pen ready, a few new employees whose names I hadn't memorized yet. And Thaddeus was standing by the panoramic window next to Ophelia Banks, the director of our department. Ophelia, a woman in her early 50s, was always impeccably dressed with beautifully styled silver hair. She headed the entire development department and had built a brilliant career in the tech industry back when it was even harder for black women to break through than it is now. A smart, tough, but fair leader. The meeting went in the usual working mode. We discussed priorities for the quarter, new projects, and integration details with federal clients. When everyone started dispersing to their offices, Ophelia gestured for me to stay. Thaddeus pretended to be engrossed in checking something important on his phone, but he remained standing by the window. I could feel his tense gaze on my back. Amara, Ophelia began in her calm tone, I noticed that for the last few weeks you have been coming to work in an Uber. What happened to your car, the one the company assigned to you after your promotion? I hope you didn't get into an accident. I opened my mouth to deliver the pre-rehearsed lie about scheduled maintenance and issues with parts, but I didn't get to say a single word. My husband turned to us and, with a light, almost dismissive smile, said, My sister is driving that car now. Such a silence hung in the conference room that you could hear the hum of the air conditioner. Ophelia slowly, very slowly, shifted her gaze from me to Thaddeus. Excuse me, did I hear that correctly? Well, yes. My sister urgently needed a car. Temporary situation. Family circumstances. He shrugged as if he were talking about something trivial like a borrowed book. Soraya is your sister, not Amara's, Ophelia clarified, and steel notes appeared in her voice. Yes, of course, my younger sister. And Amara handed over a company vehicle, registered to the corporation, and issued to her as part of a compensation package. To your sister for personal use? Here, I finally found my voice. Maybe it was an adrenaline rush. Maybe just the anger accumulated over 3 weeks bursting out. But the words poured out on their own. Actually, Thaddeus and I did not agree on this. Thaddeus spun around to face me, and the smile instantly flew off his face. Amara, what are you saying? Have you lost your mind? I am telling the truth. I straightened up and looked him straight in the eyes. You said Soraya needed the car for 2 days while her Range Rover was in the shop. That was 3 weeks ago. I ask you to return my car every single day, and you accuse me of distrusting your family and being ungrateful. Amara, not here. His voice became hard and cold. A warning sounded clearly in it. And where then? I couldn't stop anymore. At home, where you will remind me once again about the down payment for the condo, or tell me that I am an ungrateful egoist who doesn't appreciate your family. An avalanche was rising inside me, years of silence and concessions, swallowed insults, unspoken grievances. I stood up from the table, although later I couldn't remember at what moment I had risen. This car is registered to the company, and I bear full financial responsibility for it. Your sister has been driving around in corporate transport for 3 weeks without any legal right, and meanwhile, I am spending a third of my salary on ride shares and am regularly late for work because of this situation. You are making a mountain out of a molehill. Thaddeus tried to take control of the situation. It is a temporary measure. Families should support each other in difficult moments. This isn't my family. The words escaped before I could think them over. This is your 30-year-old sister who can't hold down a single job for longer than 6 months, and this is my company car that you gave to her without my knowledge or consent. I noticed a muscle twitch in my husband's jaw, a sure sign that he was barely restraining his rage. We will discuss this at home when you calm down, he hissed through his teeth. No, we will discuss this right now, Ophelia intervened, and her tone boded nothing good. Thaddeus Washington, what you have just described is a gross violation of corporate policy. Company property cannot be transferred to third parties without official permission from management. You, as the HR director, should know this better than any other employee. Ophelia, I assure you, this is just a misunderstanding. This is not a misunderstanding, but a direct violation of internal company rules, she cut him off, and judging by Amara's reaction, far from the only one. Mr. Washington, please be so kind as to leave the conference room. You have an obvious conflict of interest in this situation. Thaddeus shot me a look full of fury and a promise that I would regret this conversation. Then he turned sharply and walked out, slamming the glass door with force. Ophelia waited until his footsteps faded in the hallway, then moved to the chair opposite me. Amara, I need you to tell me everything from the very beginning. Take your time. We have time. And I told her about the credit card with the $15,000 limit that Thaddeus opened in my name without my knowledge, and then spent that money on his needs. About how I had to cancel a long-awaited vacation because I urgently needed to organize his mother's birthday party, look for a restaurant, plan the menu, and call guests. About family dinners, where Thaddeus constantly interrupted me and explained to relatives what I actually meant, distorting the meaning of my words. And then Ophelia asked a question that finally completely overturned my understanding of what was happening. Amara, tell me honestly, has your husband ever discussed your performance reviews and the results of your annual appraisal with you? No, never. Was he supposed to? She was silent for a few seconds, clearly thinking about how best to formulate the next question. I need to check something in the internal documents. But first, answer me. Do you know of cases where Thaddeus used his official position to make hiring decisions in favor of his relatives or friends? And then I broke completely. I remembered Rodney, Thaddeus's cousin, who got a programmer position in our company, even though rumors said he completely failed the technical interview. I remembered Marcus, Thaddeus's friend from college days, who was promoted to team lead bypassing several more experienced and qualified employees. There were such cases, I admitted reluctantly, but I wasn't completely sure. I thought maybe they really were suitable for those positions. Ophelia stood up decisively and picked up the phone. Dennis, come to the conference room immediately and get legal on the line right away. Have them prepare all necessary documents regarding the unauthorized use of corporate property. Yes, it is truly urgent. She turned back to me. The car will be returned today before the end of the business day. And tomorrow morning, I intend to have a serious conversation with Sterling Jefferson about whether a man incapable of observing elementary ethical boundaries can occupy the position of HR director in our company. Tears gushed from my eyes before I could hold them back. Years of accumulated tension, fears, and self-doubt burst out in one powerful stream. I am just so tired of constantly pretending that everything is okay, that this is normal. Ophelia silently handed me a box of tissues. Amara, I have been watching your work for 5 years. You know what I've noticed lately? You are becoming quieter and more invisible with every month. A year ago, you actively argued with me in meetings, fiercely defended your ideas and projects, weren't afraid to express opinions. And now, you start every sentence with an apology and disclaimers. I chalked it up to professional burnout, but now I see. You were being systematically burned out. Your initiative was being suppressed. The next hour flew by in some strange fog. Lawyers appeared with folders of documents, official requests, and claims were drafted, papers were signed. I left the office completely devastated and of course took an Uber again to my favorite coffee shop, The Daily Grind on Auburn Avenue. I ordered a large caramel macchiato for $7 without even looking at the price tag and settled at a quiet table by the window overlooking the street. My phone started blowing up with calls and messages. 17 missed calls and 23 WhatsApp messages from Thaddeus. I reluctantly opened the chat and scanned the text. We need to talk urgently. Amara, answer immediately. You are making a monstrous mistake. How could you do this to me? Think about my reputation in the company. You will bitterly regret this. Mark my words. Then his mother started calling. I watched the vibrating phone for a while, the screen lighting up with Bernadine, then simply flipped its screen down and pushed it away. Having finished my coffee, I dialed my friend Nia's number, the only person I could trust. Nia, sorry to bother you. Can I stay with you for a couple of days? It is unbearable to be at home right now. Of course, girl, what happened? You are in tears. I can hear it in your voice. I told her the whole story from the beginning, not missing any details. She was silent for a long time, digesting what she heard, then sighed deeply. Amara, that is pure psychological abuse and financial manipulation to boot. Your husband is a typical abuser who is systematically suppressing you. But maybe I really am making a mountain out of a molehill? I doubted. So what? He let his sister use the car? Stop, 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 Nia interrupted decisively. It is not about the car as such. It is about the fact that he systematically violates your personal boundaries, controls your finances without your knowledge, and undermines your self-esteem and professional reputation. Amara, he is gaslighting you full stop. At 3 in the afternoon, an angry message arrived from Soraya from an unfamiliar number. Amara, what kind of cheap circus act have you staged? I just got an official letter from your company's lawyers demanding the return of the car by 10 a.m. tomorrow. Otherwise, they threaten to go to the police with a grand theft auto report. Have you lost your mind? Ready to destroy a family over some piece of metal on wheels? I took a screenshot of the message and forwarded it to Nia for the record. In the evening, I still had to return home to pick up the most necessary things. Thaddeus's black Prada loafers were importantly standing in their usual place in the hallway. My hands were trembling treacherously when I put the key in the lock. My husband was waiting for me in the kitchen. His tie was undone and hanging loosely around his neck. His face was crimson with anger. His hair was disheveled, as if after a fight. "Do you even realize what you did today?" he yelled as soon as I crossed the threshold of the condo. Soraya was publicly humiliated and insulted. Mom has been crying all day. She can't calm down. Dad called from Florida, where he is for treatment, asking how we could treat our own family so cruelly. "That is a company car, issued to me by the corporation," I replied, trying with all my might to remain calm. "I bear full financial responsibility for it to my employer. It has been 3 weeks, Thaddeus. For 3 weeks, your sister has been driving around in corporate transport. You are just taking revenge on me for something." He took a step closer, looming over me. "Decided to publicly humiliate and punish me. Well, maybe you would deign to explain for what exactly." And then I remembered a recent conversation with Oliver, my direct supervisor. A month ago, he accidentally mentioned that Thaddeus had approached him several times for informal chats about my work. Maybe for the fact that for 3 years in a row you persuaded Oliver to lower my performance ratings at the annual reviews? Thaddeus froze in place with his mouth open. What kind of delusional fantasies are these? Oliver let it slip at the holiday party himself. You regularly approached him and advised him to give me a meets expectations rating, instead of the deserved exceeds expectations, allegedly to avoid suspicions of nepotism and favoritism. "I was protecting you from gossip and rumors," as he shouted. "You were depriving me of deserved bonuses and career growth opportunities." I also switched to shouting. 3 years, Thaddeus. For 3 years you methodically sabotaged my career, and I, like a fool, thought I just wasn't good enough for a promotion. I went into the bedroom and started hastily packing things into a travel bag. Thaddeus followed on my heels. "If you leave this house now, don't bother coming back. That's it, Amara. We are done. This is the end." I zipped up the bag, straightened up, and looked him straight in the eyes. "That is perfect. It means we really are done." "You will regret this," he shouted after me as I headed for the exit. "This is the biggest mistake of your worthless life. You will come crawling back to me on your knees." I didn't answer a word, just walked out, called an Uber through the app, and gave the driver Nia's address. The next morning, exactly at 8 o'clock, a message arrived from Ophelia with a photo attached. My silver Cadillac was gracing its usual spot in the corporate parking lot. "Welcome home," read the laconic caption under the picture. I burst into tears right at breakfast. Nia hugged me and held me close. "Hey, girl, what is it? Everything ended well." "I know. It's just, you understand. For 3 whole weeks, I looked at that empty parking spot every morning and thought I couldn't change anything, that it would always be like this. And turns out, all I had to do was gather the courage and speak the truth out loud." At 10 in the morning, I gathered my resolve and called Oliver. "Oliver, I really need to know the whole truth. What exactly and how often did Thaddeus say to you about my work?" He was silent into the phone for a long time, then sighed heavily. "Amara, I am incredibly uncomfortable and ashamed. I should have told you much earlier, but you understand, he is the HR director. I thought he knew better. He understands people better." "Oliver, please. It is important for me to know." "He approached me literally every quarter before the performance review period. He said that you are, of course, doing great and coping excellently, but you have a tendency to dive too deep into technical details and forget about team interaction. That you still need to gain experience in managing people and projects. That overly high ratings could go to your head and negatively affect your motivation. And this went on for 3 years. My breath caught. Yes, something like that. Forgive me, Amara. I am terribly ashamed that I fell for those manipulations. After the conversation, I sat by the window for a long time, looking at the city and rethinking the past. 3 full years. Not an isolated incident, not a momentary weakness, but a systematic, thought-out sabotage of my career. And all this time, Thaddeus smiled sweetly at me at breakfast, called me sunshine and baby, kissed me before bed, and simultaneously methodically destroyed my professional future. A week later, I was invited to a meeting with Sterling Jefferson, the CEO of Apex Tech. In the spacious office, besides him, were 2 people in strict business suits. External consultants from a D.C. law firm specializing in corporate law. "Ms. Amara," Sterling began in an official tone, "an internal investigation has revealed a whole series of extremely serious violations on the part of Mr. Thaddeus Washington. It is extremely important for us to get your detailed testimony on all facts known to you." For the next 2 hours, I answered questions in detail, recalling all the nuances. I told them about Rodney and the dubious circumstances of his hiring, about Marcus's rapid promotion contrary to all logic, about the lowered performance ratings, about the mysteriously vanished complaints from female employees regarding inappropriate behavior of certain male colleagues. Now I was beginning to understand where and why they disappeared without a trace. "The scale of the revealed violations significantly exceeds our initial fears," one of the lawyers stated grimly. "Falsification of internal documents, abuse of office, creation of a corrupt system of mutual cover-ups. Mr. Washington will be offered the chance to resign voluntarily. Otherwise, termination for cause with a permanent record." The news of the large-scale investigation spread through the company with the speed of a forest fire, and immediately a real war began against me. Bernadine called 18 to 20 times a day. When I finally broke down and answered, she sobbed into the receiver. "How could you do this, Amara? We accepted you into the family like a daughter, gave you huge money for the condo when you first got married, and you are destroying my son, ruining his career over some stupid car. You have absolutely no conscience." Stanislav, Thaddeus's older brother, wrote a furious post on Facebook. Sad and painful to watch when people you sincerely considered family turn out to be capable of monstrous betrayal for the sake of momentary material gain. Thaddeus's aunt left a long voice message on WhatsApp. "Amara, I always considered you a decent, well-raised young woman. But what you did to Thaddeus. You cold-bloodedly destroyed the life of a wonderful man, a loving husband and son. I hope you can sleep peacefully at night, knowing what you have done. Even my own mother didn't support me in this situation. Baby, maybe you got a little too heated with this scandal. Family is sacred. It is the most important thing in a woman's life. Was it worth causing such a grand scandal over some car? You could have endured it for the sake of peace in the house." Only my faithful friend Nia remained an unshakable pillar. "Amara, they are all wrong, and you know it perfectly well. It wasn't you who destroyed his life. He systematically destroyed yours, and he did it slowly, methodically, with a smile on his face, for years." 2 weeks later, an unfamiliar woman called me asking for a meeting. "Ms. Amara, my name is Karina Miller. I worked in the HR department of your company 3 years ago under the supervision of Thaddeus Washington. We could meet and talk. It concerns your husband's work methods." We agreed to meet at a cozy cafe called Bean and Leaf near Piedmont Park. Karina was about 30, a pretty brunette with beautiful eyes and nervous hand movements. "I have been following the news about the internal investigation at Apex," she began without preamble, "and decided that I just have to tell my story. You are far from his first victim, believe me." She told her sad story of how Thaddeus was initially the ideal boss who supported a young specialist, praised her for successes, and helped with career growth. How then, gradually, strange personal requests began, late messages, ambiguous compliments on her appearance. how everything changed drastically when she started dating a young man and stopped being available for flirtation. He started nitpicking my work for any reason, setting deliberately impossible tasks with unrealistic deadlines, spreading rumors among colleagues that I had serious alcohol problems, and came to work hungover. When I tried to complain to upper management, she smiled bitterly. Well, you understand which one of us was the HR director. Thaddeus convinced everyone that I just misinterpreted his friendly mentorship and support. Karina showed me saved screenshots of intrusive messages, copies of documents with clearly fabricated disciplinary actions. In the end, I just left on my own, couldn't stand the constant pressure. Then I went to a psychologist for 6 months. It seemed to me that I was going crazy from what was happening. He knows masterfully how to make a person doubt their own sanity and righteousness. Are you ready to give official testimony for the investigation? Yes, of course, if it helps stop him and protect other women from such treatment. In March, the long-awaited divorce process began. Thaddeus hired an expensive lawyer, Leonard Bergman, a big name. I turned to Mrs. Calloway, an experienced specialist in complex family cases. You and your husband have no prenup, Mrs. Calloway explained at the first consultation. By law, all jointly acquired property is divided in half. However, opening a credit card in your name without your knowledge and consent can be qualified as fraud. The systematic undermining of your career and reputation gives grounds to demand compensation for emotional distress. There are good chances to win a larger share in the division of property. And what about the debt to his parents for the down payment? They gave $50,000. Did you sign a promissory note for the loan? Was an official loan agreement with repayment terms drawn up? No. Then, from the point of view of the law, it is considered a gift to a young family for the purchase of housing. The court will recognize these funds as a gift, not a debt. For 8 exhausting months, the legal war dragged on. Counterclaims, endless motions, witness interrogations, document examinations. Thaddeus, through his lawyer, claimed that I was a vindictive, hysterical woman who destroyed his brilliant career over a petty family quarrel about the temporary use of a vehicle. I proved systematic psychological and economic abuse throughout the marriage. On the day of the final court hearing, I put on my best cherry-colored business suit and my favorite pumps with a sturdy heel. In the courtroom, Thaddeus sat in a perfectly pressed gray suit from an expensive brand. His face was impenetrable, like a mask. Judge Lucille Harper, a woman near retirement age with an attentive gaze, carefully studied all the case materials, Oliver's testimony about the systematic interference in the assessment of my work, the official report on the company's internal investigation, Karina's testimony about Thaddeus's work methods, statements from the credit card with suspicious spending, all the correspondence about the ill-fated car. Thaddeus's lawyer tried his best to present the events as an act of revenge by an offended spouse. Ms. Amara used her official position and connections in the company to initiate her husband's firing. Because of a completely insignificant episode with the temporary use of a car, she cold-bloodedly destroyed the career of a man who cared for her and provided for the family for 6 years. Mrs. Calloway methodically and consistently smashed this version to smithereens. The company's internal investigation revealed numerous violations completely unrelated to the notorious car. Falsification of documents regarding the employment of relatives, concealment of female employees' complaints about harassment, systematic lowering of the spouse's performance ratings with the aim of slowing down her career growth. This is not revenge. These are the natural consequences of the defendant's own unlawful actions. When it was my turn to testify, I stood up, squared my shoulders, and looked Thaddeus straight in the eyes. For 6 long years, I made myself smaller and more invisible so that you could feel big and significant. I apologized for my own successes, doubted my abilities and talents, refused career opportunities. The story with the car was simply the last straw that broke the camel's back. I finally realized that I deserve a partner who will rejoice in my achievements, not sabotage them. Someone who will see me as an equal individual, not property for manipulation. The court's decision turned out completely in my favor. The condo in Buckhead transferred to my ownership, despite all arguments about the down payment from Thaddeus's parents. Compensation for emotional damages amounted to $50,000. Not millions, of course, but for a family court, it is a significant sum. The court ordered Thaddeus to pay all debts on that ill-fated credit card. Judge Harper addressed Thaddeus with a closing word. The court finds fully proven the fact of the defendant's systematic use of his official position and family status to control, suppress, and manipulate his spouse. Such behavior is unacceptable and contradicts the very foundations of family relationships, which should be built on mutual respect and support. Thaddeus turned pale and clenched his fists. On the way out of the courtroom, he tried to approach me, but Mrs. Calloway decisively stood between us. "Mark my words, you will never be truly happy without me," he hissed through clenched teeth. "You know what? I would rather be completely alone than next to a person who makes me feel lonely in my own home," I replied calmly, and stepped out into the March sun. A year later, my life has changed beyond recognition. I bought a small but very cozy apartment in the historic district of Midtown on a quiet street, furnished it completely to my taste. A dark brown velvet sofa instead of a practical beige one, paintings by modern Atlanta artists on the walls, a large desk by the window with a view of the city skyline. At work, I headed a large-scale integration project with Federal Information Systems. I no longer started every sentence with apologies and disclaimers. I wasn't afraid to argue and defend my point of view in meetings. In September, I was officially appointed Director of Solutions Architecture, exactly the position Thaddeus had so diligently protected me from for the last 3 years. "An absolutely deserved promotion," Ophelia said at the appointment ceremony. "This time, no one whispered behind your back that you supposedly aren't ready for such responsibility." And then Omari appeared in my life. We met at a big tech conference, the Tech South Summit. He gave an interesting presentation on modern approaches to industrial systems security. After his speech, I asked a few technical questions. We started talking and, unnoticed, chatted in the conference center lobby for over an hour. Omari was 37. He worked as a lead cybersecurity architect at a major firm, lived alone after a divorce that happened 2 years ago. We started dating without rushing, leisurely coffee at the cozy Daily Grind, long walks through Centennial Park, a joint trip to the Alliance Theater. When I decided to tell him the whole truth about Thaddeus and our divorce, he was silent for a long time, thinking over what he heard, and then said, "You know what I admire most in this story? You didn't break under such pressure. You came out of this nightmare only stronger and more confident in yourself. That requires incredible courage and strength of character." On International Women's Day, he didn't give me a banal bouquet of red roses, but an elegant pot with a white orchid. "So it grows and blooms day by day, just like you." When I had crunch times at work and had to stay late, he would come straight to the office with a hot dinner from a soul food spot and settle in a corner with a book while I finished urgent business. Didn't demand constant attention, didn't throw jealous scenes, just quietly was there when needed. One Saturday morning at breakfast, he unexpectedly said, "Listen, I would like to meet your mom if you, of course, aren't against such a development." "Omari, I want to warn you right away. I won't become the woman who sacrifices her career for a relationship. I won't apologize for my professional ambitions or pretend that career growth isn't important to me." If that was unacceptable to him. He leaned over and gently kissed the top of my head. "Amara, listen carefully. I don't need a woman who pretends to be smaller and weaker than she actually is. I need exactly you, smart, strong, ambitious, knowing her worth, just as you are, without any masks and pretense." The following spring, I completely accidentally ran into Thaddeus in the parking lot of Lenox Square Mall. He had changed a lot physically, gained noticeable weight. His hair had gone quite gray with bald patches. Dark circles lay under his eyes. "Amara, hello." "Hello, Thaddeus. I heard about your appointment. Director of Architecture, I sincerely congratulate you." "Thank you," I replied neutrally. I work at a small logistics firm in Decatur now, just a mid-level manager. Salary is 3 times less than it was. But what can you do? An awkward pause hung between us. I was a terrible husband to you. I nodded silently. An incomplete apology, but at least an admission of the problem. You look happy, is it true? I mentally pictured Omari, who was waiting for me at home with grocery bags for our Saturday dinner. Remembered work, where I am valued as a professional. The apartment where every detail of the interior is chosen by me and pleases the eye. Yes, Thaddeus, I really am happy. You deserve this happiness. We silently went our separate ways. I got into my faithful Cadillac. Yes, yes, the very car with which this whole story began, and drove home. A song was playing on the radio that I chose, not someone else for me. The skyscrapers gleamed in the rays of the setting sun with the same pink-gold hues as on that ill-fated morning when I discovered the empty parking spot. Only now I no longer disappeared, didn't dissolve in other people's desires. I lived a full life. At home, Omari met me with bags from Whole Foods. How was the shopping trip? Fine. By the way, I ran into Thaddeus at Lennox in the parking lot. He raised his eyebrows in a silent question. And how did the meeting go? Calmly. He has really gone downhill physically. Looks battered. Do you pity him at least a little? I thought for a moment. Probably yes, a little pity. But that doesn't mean at all that I doubt the correctness of my choice. Of course it doesn't mean that. He hugged me and held me close. Let's go to the kitchen. I bought fresh salmon. We'll cook your favorite dinner with white wine. In the evening, standing by the window with a glass of wine and looking at the lights of the evening city, I reflected on the path traveled. Remembered that woman who was afraid to touch the coffee machine in her own home. The one who constantly apologized for her desires, dreams, and successes. The one who allowed her voice and right to vote to be stolen. She remained far in the past, like a bad dream, and I finally returned to myself. 3 weeks of Uber rides, 3 weeks of humiliation and financial loss. But they became the turning point, the beginning of a completely new life. A life where I choose the music in the car, the color of the sofa in the living room, and the person next to me myself. Ophelia turned out to be absolutely right in her words. There is a huge difference between surviving and living a full life. I survived for 6 long years. Now I am truly living.